Hi, I'm Bob Gimlin. Captain Commander Ivan Ivanovich Bering served in the Russian Navy in the early 1700s. He led a successful mission to map out Northeast Asia and a mysterious area that would become known as the Bering Strait, named in honor of the route he took. This expedition, which is known as the First Kamchatka Expedition, left one glaring question. Is this landmass North America? The very same continent where other Europeans had settled out farther east. So the Russian imperial government slashed Commander Bering's salary in half to motivate him off his growing posterior and figure out this place's relationship to the rest of the known world. In 1741, Captain Commander Bering set off with two ships, the St. Peter and the St. Paul. A naturalist and surgeon named Georg Steller was aboard one of them. No authentic portrait exists of Mr. Georg Wilhelm Steller, probably because he didn't have time to sit still for 4 hours while having his portrait taken. Because he had work to do. Making no friends among the crew, the naturalist surgeon insisted upon exploring all land they stumbled upon. He often made these trips alone, the crew not wanting to get their feet wet while landing. They thought the young man was insane. It was recorded that they would applaud him when he would reach dry land and jeer upon his return. It is widely held that Steller was literally the first European to set his shoes on the shores of the Alaskan mainland. He is also the one who determined that Alaska is in fact part of North America. He came to this conclusion by citing what is called Steller's jay, and he recognized its similarities to drawings of the blue jay that he had seen from the east of North America. So he concluded that the land masses were one and the same. The Steller's jay is not the only animal that Steller was first to document. There's Steller's elder, the sea otter, of course Steller's sea eagle, and Steller's sea cow, a 30-foot-long manatee, which was eaten. Its skin was used as boat canvas, its fat was rendered for oil, and it was unfortunately unable to submerge. It also had no natural fear of people. Needless to say, it didn't last long and is now extinct. Among the animals that Steller cataloged was a cryptid that has come to be known as Steller's sea ape. Steller documented that, quote, the animal was about 2 ells long, approximately 5.5 feet. The head was like a dog's head, the ears pointed and erect, and on the upper and lower lips on both sides, whiskers hung down. The eyes were large. The body was longish, round and fat, but gradually became thinner toward the tail. The skin was covered thickly with hair, gray on the back, reddish-white on the belly. But in the water, it seemed to be entirely red and cow-colored. The tail, which was equipped with fins, was divided in 2 parts, the upper fin being 2 times as long as the lower one, just like on the sharks. However, I was not a little surprised that I could perceive neither forefeet, as in marine amphibians, nor fins in the place. Steller said that he and others viewed the creature for almost 2 hours, as it circled the boat and interacted with the crew. Steller mentions that it looked at the sailors, and that it seemed to have facial expressions. Steller also noted that it would play among the bull kelp, which he referred to as monkey antics. Steller settled that this creature was like a monkey. After 2 hours of observation, Steller fetched a gun and tried to shoot the animal. He missed, and it disappeared. This is a copy of Steller's actual sketch of a sea otter. This is a sketch by Steller of Steller's sea cow. And here is a description of his sea cow. It never comes upon dry land to feed, but it can use its forelimbs for a number of tasks: swimming, walking on the shallows of the shore, supporting himself on the rocks, digging for algae and seagrasses, fighting, and embracing. It is covered with a thick hide, more like unto the bark of an ancient oak than unto the skin of an animal. The manatee's hide is black, mangy, wrinkled, rough, hard, and tough. It is void of hair, and almost impervious to an axe or the point of a hook. And here are some sketches by Steller of Steller's sea lion. I am trying to say that Steller had the eyes and brain for observation. He was one of the first naturalists to employ Linnaean classification in the field, which is the undisputed system of modern, accurate taxonomy or classification when used in conjunction with genetics. Steller's sketches, though obviously not perfect, are filled with scrutinizing detail. The sea cow, the sea otter, Steller's sea eagles, Steller's sea lion, are all outlined in his book De Bestis Marinus, or Beasts of the Sea. The sea ape did not appear in De Bestis Marinus. Why? Because it was fake? No. The sea ape did not appear in his book because Steller was not an idiot. He knew the unlikelihood of such a creature. He knew he was seeing something odd. I firmly believe that he had no intention of detailing a creature publicly without a body, or some form of evidence. And he was smart to do so, for fear that all his work would be dismissed, which I think would be unacceptable to someone like him. Most of Steller's documentation belongs to private collectors, which is where the description came from. It is likely that he sketched the creature, because he was clearly compulsive, but such a sketch has never been released, if there even is one at all. There is one part of Steller's description which I find particularly problematic. He describes the tail fin of the creature as that of a shark. He says, the upper fin being 2 times as long as the lower one, just like on the sharks. What he is saying is that the creature's upper caudal fin was longer than the lower caudal fin, common in most sharks, seen here exaggerated by the thrasher shark. The problem is that Steller said upper and lower, not left or right. No mammals have upper fins. Mammalian tail fins, like whales and dolphins and seals, point either to the left or right of the animal, while a shark's points above or below the animal. Sharks propel themselves through side-to-side motion. Dolphins up and down. This fish moves side to side. This whale would move up and down. Snake side to side. Otter up and down. So if Steller is accurately describing what he saw, it is certainly in complete unknown territory, at least with regard to what we know about biology, which apparently is not too much. If this report came from anyone other than George Wilhelm Steller, I probably would have ignored it. But Steller is kind of in a league of his own. He was the first to confirm that Alaska is part of North America, using birds, and he endured rampant unpopularity among a boat of Russian sailors for doing so. He was something of a badass. Just under a year after the 2-ship expedition began, the St. Peter and St. Paul bared a tremendous storm that ripped the ships apart, somewhere about here. Commander Bering decided to flee the storm by returning to the known world, where maps at least existed. Steller, aboard the other ship, commandeered control and refused to return west, knowing the ship would never make it. In late July, Steller's ship wrecked somewhere on the mainland. Commander Bering's ship wrecked upon a then uninhabited island chain, now called the Commander Islands. Bering and his entire crew died there. On the mainland, Steller began supervision on repairing the ship. It was not seaworthy by winter, and it is largely believed that Steller's knowledge on the environment, which he had gathered from the expedition, allowed the crew to survive the harsh Alaskan winter. Not only did Steller provide the knowledge to keep a clueless crew of sailors alive during an Alaskan winter, and rebuild his ship, but he even launched a rescue in search of Commander Bering once reconstruction was complete. Steller never found Bering and his crew, but Steller's cartography shows that he passed the very coast where Bering was marooned. Apparently no one spotted the wreck. It is also unlikely that Bering and his crew were still alive. Steller also managed to map much of the Aleutian Islands before returning to safety almost 2 years after his ship initially wrecked. Steller returned to Alaska, but was eventually deported for sympathizing with the indigenous people, which Russians began using as slaves. So why am I telling you all this? I'm trying to impress upon you the importance of Steller's character. If such a sighting was documented by just about anyone other than Steller, I don't think I would even consider it. But as far as credibility, both professional and personal character is concerned, I don't think there really could have been a better witness to such a sight. And I think we can go ahead and definitively and unequivocally rule out hoax on this one. Cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman suggests that Steller possibly saw a, quote, congenitally deformed fur seal. No. Steller had spent many months at sea already. He had labeled and described animals that no European ever had. His diaries are filled with hundreds of drawings and descriptions of the wildlife. he surely was able to distinguish between a sick seal and something else. He watched it for 2 hours. He saw its face. He even shot at it. And he was very clear. It was he himself that called it a sea ape. None of Steller's work points to anything other than an accurate examination, let alone blatant lying about something that he never even sought to publish. Upon examining the timeline, I found that Steller marooned in early July, and he had his sighting in mid-August. Is it possible that an intelligent cryptid perceived the crew as in a state of distress? Or at least in a state of out of the ordinary? And that is why it made its presence known? Was a creature attracted to a big ship, the likes of which never before seen in the area, and once shot at, the creature or creatures left with the knowledge to stay away from such crafts, knowing humans are bound to them in these areas? Steller's sea cow didn't last 30 years from its first sighting. Sea otters were so mercilessly hunted that they were thought to be extinct. Is it any wonder why something intelligent would make itself scarce around human activity? A sea ape seems like a stretch. If you were to ask me if I believed in some kind of marine ape, not just in habitat, but in anatomical features, I would have to say no. I don't believe in a sea ape. But if you were to ask me if Steller was mistaken, I would also have to say no. I don't like contradictions at all, though I seem to be in one. Is it possible that a highly advanced species of primate, or something acutely intelligent, with pinniped or cetacean features, exists on desolate coasts? It seems unlikely, but Mr. Steller saw something. He didn't know what it was any more than I do. But what do you think Steller shot at on that Alaskan coastline in 1741? Any and all input is appreciated. Make sure you like the video, and as always, thanks an awful lot for listening.